Jessica stirred, a low groan escaping her lips. Her body felt heavy, as if weighed down by an invisible force. She tried to move, but her limbs were sluggish, unresponsive. The world around her was a blur, shapes and shadows dancing in her peripheral vision. Her head throbbed, a dull ache pulsing behind her eyes. It was as if 1,000 tiny hammers were striking her skull in unison. She winced, bringing a trembling hand to her forehead, trying to massage away the pain. She was lying on something hard, covered with a rough blanket. The surface beneath her was unforgiving, pressing into her back and shoulders. The blanket, though coarse and scratchy, was the only source of warmth in the chilly air. As her vision slowly cleared, she realized she was in a small, dilapidated cabin. The walls were made of old, weathered wood, and the ceiling sagged ominously. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and the floor was littered with debris. The air hung heavy with the scent of mildew and decay. It was a pungent, almost suffocating odor that made her stomach churn. She took shallow breaths, trying to avoid inhaling too deeply. Panic welled up inside her. Where was she? How did she get here? Her mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of her memory. She felt a rising tide of fear, threatening to overwhelm her. She remembered the storm, the terrifying roar of the waves as their small boat capsized. The sky had been a dark, angry grey, and the sea churned with relentless fury. She could still hear the howling wind and the crashing waves, the icy grip of the ocean pulling her under. She had struggled, fought against the relentless current, but it was too strong. The cold water had enveloped her, dragging her down into the depths. Then nothing. Now she found herself in this strange, unfamiliar place. Her mind was a foggy haze, and she couldn't remember how she had ended up here. It was as if a part of her memory had been erased. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat a frantic drum against her ribs. The fear was palpable, a cold, clammy sensation that gripped her entire being. She felt as if she were on the brink of a panic attack. She was alone, injured, and stranded. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She had no idea where she was or how to get out. The isolation was suffocating, and the pain in her body was a constant reminder of her vulnerability. Gingerly, Jessica sat up, pushing aside the heavy blanket. Every movement was a struggle, her muscles protesting with each shift. She gritted her teeth, determined to push through the pain. Her leg screamed in protest, a sharp, searing pain shooting through her. She glanced down and saw a deep gash running along her calf. The sight of the wound made her stomach turn, but she knew she had to keep moving. She stifled a cry, biting her lip to hold back the tears. The pain was almost unbearable, but she couldn't afford to break down now. She needed to stay strong, to find a way out of this nightmare. She had to focus. She had to figure out where she was and how to get help. Taking a deep breath, she scanned the room, looking for anything that might give her a clue. There had to be something, some sign of how she had ended up here and how she could escape. Her eyes landed on a small window, partially covered by a tattered curtain. Light streamed in, casting a faint glow on the floor. It was a glimmer of hope, a possible way out. With great effort, Jessica struggled to her feet, using the wall for support. Her legs wobbled and she felt dizzy, but she forced herself to stay upright. She had to reach that window. She limped towards the window, each step sending jolts of pain through her injured leg. But she pressed on, driven by the need to escape. The closer she got, the more determined she became. Finally, she reached the window and peered outside. The view was obscured by grime and dirt, but she could make out the shapes of trees and the faint outline of a path. It was a way out, a chance to find help. Taking a deep breath, Jessica steeled herself for what lay ahead. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she had no choice. She had to survive, to find her way back to safety. With renewed determination, she prepared to face whatever challenges awaited her outside that cabin. Jessica took a deep breath, trying to ignore the throbbing pain in her leg. The pain was sharp, a constant reminder of the fall she had taken while fleeing through the dense jungle. She could feel the swelling, the bruising, but she had no time to tend to it. Survival was her only focus now. The cabin was small, barely large enough to hold a cot, and it seemed to close in on her with every passing second. The walls were thin, offering little protection from the elements or the dangers lurking outside. A rickety table and a chair stood in one corner, their surfaces marred by time and neglect. They looked as though they might collapse under the slightest pressure. Cobwebs clung to every corner and dust covered every surface. It was clear that no one had set foot in this place for years, maybe even decades. The air was stale, filled with the scent of decay and abandonment. It was clear the cabin had been abandoned long ago. The silence inside was almost deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the wooden structure settling. Through a crack in the wall, she glimpsed dense foliage, the jungle outside teeming with life. The contrast between the vibrant outside world and the desolate interior of the cabin was stark. The lush green leaves swaying gently in the breeze seemed almost mocking, a reminder of the freedom she currently lacked. Each movement of the leaves was a whisper of the life she was fighting to reclaim. The air was thick with humidity, making it hard to breathe. Every breath she took felt heavy, laden with the moisture of the jungle. It was as if the very air was conspiring to slow her down, to keep her trapped. The sounds of the jungle pressed in on all sides. Chirping insects created a constant background hum, a reminder of the teeming life just beyond the cabin walls. The screech of unseen birds pierced the air, their calls echoing through the dense foliage. Each screech was a jolt to her already frayed nerves, a reminder of the wildness that surrounded her. And then a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down her spine. It was a sound that spoke of predators, of unseen dangers lurking just out of sight. Her heart raced, pounding in her chest like a drum. Fear tightened its grip on Jessica's chest. She could feel it constricting her, making it hard to think, hard to plan. But she knew she couldn't afford to give in to it. She had to stay focused, had to find a way out. This was no ordinary island. It was a place of mystery, of danger. The very ground seemed to hum with an energy that was both alluring and terrifying. She had heard stories of such places, but never imagined she would find herself in one. The air itself seemed to hum with danger, a palpable tension that made every hair on her body stand on end. The mist that clung to the trees added to the eerie atmosphere, casting long shadows that seemed to move and shift with a life of their own. With the promise of unseen threats lurking just beyond the shadows, Jessica knew she had to be careful. Every step, every decision could mean the difference between life and death. The jungle was a living entity, watching, waiting. She had to get out of here. The thought was a constant mantra in her mind, driving her forward. She couldn't let the fear paralyze her. She had to find a way to escape this nightmare. She had to find help. Somewhere out there, beyond the oppressive jungle, there had to be someone who could help her. She just had to keep moving, keep fighting. The jungle might be vast and dangerous, but she was determined to survive. With a grimace, Jessica swung her legs off the cot and tentatively put weight on her injured leg. A sharp pain shot through her ankle and she stumbled, grabbing onto the edge of the table to steady herself. It was definitely sprained, maybe even broken. Taking a deep breath, Jessica forced herself to move. She had to get out of this cabin, had to assess her surroundings. Using the table as support, she limped towards the door, each step sending waves of pain through her leg. The door creaked open, revealing a wall of green. The jungle pressed close to the cabin, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying vegetation. The air was alive with the buzzing of insects and the calls of unseen creatures. Fear coiled in her stomach, cold and sharp. Section 4. The Lurking Menace. Jessica took a tentative step outside, her hand gripping the rough-hewn doorframe for support. The wooden hut had been her sanctuary for the past few days, a fragile barrier between her and the untamed wilderness that surrounded her. Each creak of the door seemed to echo her own apprehension, a reminder of the lurking dangers that lay just beyond the threshold. The jungle floor was soft and spongy beneath her feet, the air heavy with moisture. Every step she took was met with the resistance of the damp earth, as if the jungle itself was reluctant to let her pass. The ground was a patchwork of moss and decaying leaves, a testament to the relentless cycle of life and death in this verdant prison. She could hear the gentle lapping of water nearby, and the air seemed to vibrate with the low hum of insects. The sound of the water was a constant companion, a soothing yet eerie reminder of the river that snaked its way through the jungle. The insects, with their incessant buzzing, created a symphony of life that was both mesmerizing and maddening. Her eyes scanned the dense undergrowth, searching for any sign of danger. The foliage was thick and impenetrable, a wall of green that hid countless threats. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent her heart racing. She knew that in this jungle, the line between predator and prey was razor thin. A flash of movement caught her eye, a long, sinuous form gliding through the shallow water. It moved with a grace that belied its deadly nature, a silent predator in a world of noise. The water rippled in its wake, a fleeting disturbance that hinted at the danger lurking beneath the surface. A crocodile. Its eyes, cold and reptilian, locked onto her, and Jessica felt a surge of primal fear course through her. Those eyes, unblinking and emotionless, seemed to pierce through her very soul. She knew that in the blink of an eye it could launch itself from the water and drag her into the depths. She backed away slowly, never taking her eyes off the predator. Each step was a calculated move, a delicate dance of survival. Her breath came in shallow gasps, her body tense with the instinctual urge to flee, but she knew that running would only trigger the crocodile's predatory instincts. As she moved, a dark shadow passed overhead, the air disturbed by the beating of powerful wings. The sudden shift in light and the rush of air made her look up, her heart skipping a beat. The jungle was not just a threat from the ground. Danger could come from above as well. Vultures circled above, their keen eyes scanning the jungle floor for any sign of weakness. They were the harbingers of death, ever watchful and patient. Jessica knew that to them she was just another potential meal, another creature struggling to survive in this unforgiving environment. The sight of them was a grim reminder of the stakes she faced, a constant pressure to stay vigilant and strong. Determined to find a way out, Jessica continued to move forward, her eyes darting between the ground and the sky. She found a narrow path, barely visible through the thick foliage, and decided to follow it. Each step was a gamble, a test of her resolve and her ability to navigate this treacherous terrain. Sweat began to bead on her forehead, a mix of exertion and fear. The humidity was oppressive, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. Every breath was a struggle, the air thick with the scent of decay and the ever-present hum of life. She paused frequently, straining her ears to catch any sound that might indicate danger. The jungle was alive with noise, but she had learned to distinguish between the benign and the threatening. A distant roar, the snap of a branch, the rustle of leaves, each sound was a potential warning, a clue to the hidden dangers that surrounded her. Finally, she spotted a distant clearing, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. It was a small break in the relentless green, a promise of open space and perhaps safety. With renewed determination, she quickened her pace, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. Reaching the edge of the clearing, Jessica looked around cautiously. The open space felt both liberating and exposed, a double-edged sword in her quest for survival. She knew that while it offered a respite from the dense jungle, it also made her more visible to predators. Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself for the next challenge. The jungle was relentless, but so was she. With every step, she reaffirmed her will to survive, to overcome the lurking menace that sought to claim her. Jessica knew that her journey was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever came next. Section 5. Navigating the treacherous swamp. The jungle seemed to close in around Jessica, the air thick with humidity and the oppressive weight of unseen eyes. She knew she couldn't stay near the cabin. It offered no protection, no escape from the predators that stalked this island. She had to find higher ground, a place of safety, but the jungle floor was a treacherous maze of tangled roots, dense undergrowth, and treacherous swamps. Every step was a gamble. Every movement could attract unwanted attention. Jessica pressed on, her heart pounding in her chest. She used her makeshift crutch to test the ground ahead, wary of hidden dangers. Fear gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. She had to keep moving. She had to survive. Section 6. A glimmer of hope. As the sun began its slow descent towards the horizon, casting long shadows through the jungle, Jessica stumbled upon a small clearing, and there, half hidden by overgrown vines and tangled vegetation, lay a dilapidated wooden boat. Hope surged through her, a beacon of light in the encroaching darkness. This could be her salvation, her ticket off this island of nightmares. But as she drew closer, her heart sank. The boat was old, its wooden hull rotten in places, and it was missing one of its oars. Still, it was a chance, however slim. With renewed determination, Jessica began to clear away the debris, her hands working feverishly to assess the damage. If she could just make the boat seaworthy, she might just stand a chance of escape.